There was a
The king
prophet
urgently
in
requests your
Israel
counsel.
whose
We were
name
instructed to deliver
carried
these
weight
immediately.
across the
He has
entire
saved
kingdom.
us. The oil will be enough.
We are
Kings
He has
sent
saved
messengers to his
The
door.
oil will be enough.
Generals crossed
We are-
borders seeking
He
his
has
help.
heard my cry.
Thus
Widows
says the
clung
Lord,
to hope because
I
of the
have
stories
healed
they had
these
heard
waters.
about this man of God. He
Do
turned
not worry.
bitter water sweet
jar
with a
will not
simple
run
bowl
dry.
of salt.
Go and pour.
He multiplied a single jar of oil until debts were erased and futures were restored. He healed a foreign commander of a disease no army could ever conquer. He struck entire enemy forces with blindness and led them helpless into Israel's hands. And when death itself came knocking,
The healer
he
touched him,
prayed
and he stood.
and life returned. Miracle after miracle, year after year, the question grew louder in the streets. What kind of man carries this much of God's presence? But the most haunting part of Elisha's story didn't happen while he was alive. It happened after he had been dead for years, his body buried, his tomb sealed and silent. One day, in the chaos of a hurried funeral, a corpse was thrown into that same grave. The moment flesh touched those ancient bones, death released its grip. The man's eyes opened, his chest rose, and he stood alive again in the darkness of the tomb. How does God's power cling to someone so completely that even death cannot wash it away? This is the story of ELISHA, a journey that started in an ordinary field.
Come on, you two. Pave.
Elisha's story begins in the soil, the kind that clings to your hands and settles under your nails. He was guiding the 12th yoke of oxen, a sign of a hard-working family. He was steadily carving paths across the field, the rhythm of the day simple and predictable. That is precisely when God tends to move in the middle of the ordinary. Elijah approached without announcement, without trumpet or command. He simply placed his mantle, the symbol of prophetic authority, across Elisha's shoulders. A mantle resting for a moment, then lifted again. The moment carried its own weight, heaven speaking through fabric and touch. Elisha knew it instantly. A divine calling often arrives in a whisper,
I understand your hesitation,
not a spectacle.
But look, there is still.
He left the plow
understand your
behind
hesitation,
and ran
but look,
after Elijah.
There is still. I understand your hesitation, but look, there is still.
The words he spoke were not of hesitation, but of honor, a request to say farewell to his parents. Elijah's answer carried both freedom and challenge, an invitation to choose without pressure. Elisha returned home only long enough to make a statement that would resonate for generations. He dismantled the
harvest was
plow,
bountiful,
the
thanks to
very
the
tool
Almighty.
of his livelihood,
Let us
and used its wood to build a fire. He prepared the oxen as a meal for his community, a final act of generosity. It was a declaration that there would be no turning back to his old life. Then, with the fire behind him and the mantle ahead of him, Elisha followed
The
Elijah.
journey is long, but the Lord is our strength.
He
You
served
must
as a
be
servant,
ready, for I
walking
will
behind a
be
man
taken
whose
from you
footsteps
soon.
would train his own heart. Every day, with the prophet, formed something deep within him, a steadiness and sensitivity. And then came the day when everything felt different. Elijah's steps were slower, his voice quieter, as if he carried a secret. They began in Gilgal, where Elijah turned to him and said, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me on." It sounded gentle, like a father shielding his son, but Elisha would not let distance separate them. He answered with a resolve
Welcome, Master
shaped
Elijah.
through years
We
of
have waited long
service.
for your arrival.
As the
He is
Lord
coming
lives,
this way, Master.
I will not leave
We
you.
must decide quickly. If he's
They
Elisha,
walked together
they are
to
coming.
Bethel,
The
where the
king's men
sons
know
of the
you are
prophets
here. We must-
whispered to
We confess,
Elisha.
Master. The drought is our fault.
"Do you know the Lord will take your master from you today?"
Enough. The Lord has spoken. Now stand aside and let us pass.
Elisha acknowledged them only briefly. Some moments are too sacred to dissect. Again, Elijah urged him to stay behind, and again Elisha refused to let
will you
go.
waver between two opinions? If the Lord is
At Jericho, the scene repeated, the quiet request to remain and the firm refusal to part.
Hear the word of the
Loyalty
Lord.
had become the
Do not
language
harden your
between
hearts,
them,
but receive his
spoken
truth
through
this day.
footsteps and silence. Finally, they reached the banks of the Jordan River. Elijah folded his mantle and struck the waters, and the river obeyed,
if you see me
pulling
when
back.
I am taken, speak.
They crossed on dry ground, just as Israel once had under Joshua. On the far side, Elijah stopped and asked, "What shall I do for you before I am taken?" Elisha did not speak of safety or legacy. He asked for something that revealed his heart. "Let a double portion of your spirit be upon me." He understood the road ahead would be heavy, and he desired the strength to carry it. Elijah's answer was tender. "If you see me when I am taken, it shall be so." They walked a little farther, speaking softly, the wind feeling warmer and heavier. Then, without warning, the air began to tremble.
My father, my father, the chariots.
A blaze of glory tore through the horizon, a sound too fierce to be thunder. A chariot of fire pulled by horses of fire descended between them. Flames moved like living light, carrying a presence that made silence feel holy. Elisha staggered back as the chariot separated him from Elijah. Elijah
Where
was
is the
lifted
Lord
toward
God
the
of
heavens
Elijah?
in a whirlwind, rising
Where
through
is
light
the Lord,
and flame.
the God of Elijah?
Elisha cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." He watched until he could see no more, and the sky returned to stillness.
The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha.
At his feet lay the mantle, the same one Elijah had placed on him years ago.
We are in
Elisha
distress,
tore
my
his
lord.
garments
The
in
city's
grief,
location is
then
pleasant, as
picked
you
up
can
the
see.
mantle.
We are desperate, man of God. The drought is killing us all. If you do not...
He walked back toward the Jordan, the waters rushing before him. Holding the mantle high, he struck the river and spoke, "Where is the
By
Lord,
the word of the
the
Lord,
God of Elijah?"
let this water be healed.
The river answered. It divided without hesitation, opening a path. From a distance, the sons of the prophets saw it and understood. The spirit of Elijah now rested on Elisha. A new prophet had
Lord.
risen,
The
and
creditor
heaven
is
had
coming
made
to
it
take my
unmistakably
children and-
clear. Soon after, messengers from Jericho approached him about their corrupted water. The water caused sickness and death, turning hope into a constant struggle. Elisha
Do not be
asked for a
afraid.
new bowl
For
filled with
those who are
salt
with us
and went to the
are
spring.
more than...
Thank you so much. May you be blessed.
Of course. Take as money as...
He poured the salt and declared, "I have healed this water. It will no longer bring death." From that day, the spring flowed with purity, a sign of God restoring the broken. Later,
Yes, that
a widow
stone fits
came to him
perfectly
in
there.
desperate
Bring the
anguish.
next one up quickly.
Do not doubt, woman. The Lord has heard your plea, and as he lives,
Her
do not
husband
doubt,
was
woman.
dead,
The
and a
Lord has
creditor
heard
was
your
coming to
plea,
take her
and
2
as he
sons as
lives-
slaves. She had nothing in her house but a small jar of oil. Elisha told her to borrow empty vessels from neighbors and pour the oil behind closed doors. She poured,
O Lord,
and the
my
oil
God,
flowed,
I pray,
filling vessel after vessel until she
O Lord,
ran out
my
of
God.
jars.
I pray, let the
She sold the oil, paid her debt, and saved her family, proving God needs only willingness, not abundance. In Shunem, a wealthy woman built a room for Elisha to rest. In return, Elisha promised her a son, despite her husband's old age. The boy was born, but years later, he collapsed in a field and died. The woman did not accept death. She rode to find the man of God. Elisha returned, went into the room alone, and stretched himself over the boy. Warmth returned to the body, and the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. God, through Elisha, showed that he does not abandon the gifts he gives.
Oh, my master.
Then came Naaman, the mighty Syrian
Alas,
commander
master.
who suffered from leprosy. He came expecting a grand ceremony, but was told to wash 7 times in the Jordan. Though offended at first, he obeyed, and his skin was restored like a child's. Naaman learned that obedience opens doors that strength cannot. One day, the sons of the prophets were cutting wood by the river.
Alas, my master!
An axe head
afraid,
flew off a
for those who
handle
are with us
and
are
sank
more than
into the
those who
murky
are with them.
water. The young man cried out to ELISHA, for the axe was borrowed. ELISHA threw a stick into the water, and the iron axe head floated to the surface. It was a whisper to every generation. God
keep
cares
moving.
about our
Hold on
daily stresses. Years later, the Syrian army surrounded Dothan to capture ELISHA. Elisha's servant was terrified by the horses and chariots encircling the city. Elisha prayed, "Lord, open his eyes so that he may see." The servant looked again and saw the mountains full of horses and chariots of fire.
I can't believe it! We thought you were gone.
They were never alone. The armies of heaven stood guard. Elisha led the blind army to Samaria,
We were instructed to
fed
deliver
them,
these immediately.
and sent them home
The
in
king
peace.
urgently requests your counsel. We were instructed to deliver these immediately.
Finally,
the king urgently
Elisha
requests your
grew
counsel.
old
We were
and
instructed
fell
to deliver
sick
these
with the
immediately.
illness of which he would
The
die.
king urgently requests your counsel. We were instructed to deliver these immediately.
He was
The king
buried,
urgently
a
requests
man
your
who had
counsel.
walked
We were
faithfully
instructed to
with his
deliver these
God.
immediately. The king urgently requests your counsel. We were instructed to deliver these immediately.
But even
The
then,
king urgently
God was
requests
not
your counsel.
finished.
We were instructed to deliver these immediately. The king urgently requests your counsel. We were instructed to deliver these immediately.
When a dead
The
man
king
was
urgently
thrown
requests your
into
counsel.
Elisha's
We were
tomb,
instructed to deliver
the
these
bones of the
immediately.
prophet brought
The
him
king
back to
urgently
life.
requests your counsel. We were instructed to deliver these immediately.
Elisha's
The king
story
urgently
is a
requests your
legacy
counsel.
that shouts,
We were instructed to deliver
God's
these
power
immediately.
has no end.
The king urgently requests your counsel. We were instructed to deliver these immediately.